In this video, I'm going to show you exactly the method that we are going to use to build this slick visualization, which is where you can have top products as one category and the rest can be rolled down into an others line and a bunch of fancy things along the way. You're going to enjoy this a lot. Let's start. Alright, let's just start by saying a hello to the data model that I have. I have got two simple dimension tables, the products table and the calendar table, and that is linked to my sales table right here using a one-to-many relationship, the product key right here, and obviously the date column or the order date column right here. As a base visualization, what I have created is the year as a slicer, and then we have the months placed in the table visual or the matrix visual, and then we have the product key. Now, these two columns, the year and the month, are coming from the calendar table. The product column or the product key column is obviously coming from the products table. Now, once I place my total sales calculation here, I obviously get to see all the sales, maybe even if all the sales are not relevant. And if I have a lot of products, like hundreds and hundreds of products, I don't really want to have this long scrolling table that I have. So I would want to condense this table somehow and group it into the top 3 products shown, and the rest can be rolled out into an others category. Let's just see how can we do that. First things first, let's just start to visualize that. How are we going to even attempt to build a calculation that only shows the month and the top 3 products, whatever they are, and the sales against that, and rest everything is kind of invisible? So how do we even attempt to solve this problem? Let's just first visualize this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sort the total sales right here in the descending order, click right up on the top, and at the month doesn't matter, it could be any month. We have June right here. Now, because the sales are sorted in the descending order, I can visually see which are the 3 winning products for the month of June, which is 353, 361 and 355, and the sales against that. Now, in order for me to be able to build a calculation, I need to somehow create this particular table, which is right here, which is where we have the product key for the top 3 selling products. And I just want to keep this particular table and show the values right here, and right here. That is my first step. In order for me to be able to build this, I need a table, something like this with the values, and then I can somehow just show the values right here. Let's just start to build this from scratch. All right, I'm working with a simple measure called the top product sales, which I have kept it right here. At the moment, this measure is blank. Let's just start to write some calculation. Now, because I want to show top 3 products, let me just form a table using the TOPN function. And in the TOPN function, it says how many top values do you want? I just want top 3 values. And then it says which table do you want it from? So I want it obviously from the products table, and I want it in the order. I don't really want the literal first 3 rows. I want it in the order, which is nothing but total sales. That means total sales is your criteria for selecting the top 3 rows. So my order by expression is nothing but my measure called total sales. Now this top n, which is 3 rows, actually forms a table, and you can't really have the entire table right here with all the rows and columns. So I would want to summarize this particular table. So I'm going to do is, hey, for this particular table, which can act as a filter, I want to calculate my total sales, and this is going to be the filter for that. So I can just cut that from right here and stick that in the second part of the calculate function, which acts as a filter. Now, if I happen to commit on this and just kind of run this particular visualization, I am going to see some number, but this is not really the right number, because if you take a look, that this is giving me 6928 and 6928. It's not really showing me the right number. But why is that? The problem is that as soon as you say that I want to have the top 3 products and you filter by the product key, then the entire products table is filtered down to one single product, because you're taking a look at one product. If you're filtering it down to one product, obviously that product is going to be one of the top 3, and 6928 is one of the top 3 because there is no other product. So you get to see all the products right here, and you get to see the sales of any products. But this is not what I want. So I'm going to say that, hey, why don't you remove the filters from this particular column and consider the entire month of January? So I'm going to say, hey, I want to remove the filter. So I'll use the function all, and I'll remove the filter from the products table and the product key column, which is right here. And now if I happen to do this particular calculation, hopefully this is going to give me the right result. Now it gives me a number which is 269,539, but I don't really know if that is the right number or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a test around this. I am actually going to create a new visualization, and that is going to be my card visual. In the card visual, I'm going to place my total sales right here and put that right here. That is 9.77. Now I will manually apply the filters to the month of January in 2004 and see that the top 3 products are giving me 269,539 or not. So let me just go ahead and sort this data. So I have the top 3 products. This is for the month of June. So I can just scroll down to the month of Jan. Once we have Jan here, because this data is sorted in the descending order, I can select the first one, select the second one, and select the third one. And you can see that this particular number, 26954, actually matches with this particular number. So my top is correct. That means means at least the value is correct, the display is not right. That means now I wanna somehow not display the values here. That's my first thing. And I wanna display not the total, but the individual values here. That means pick up this value, pick up this value, and pick up this value. Rest, you don't show the values. So how do I solve this problem? Let's just go back to the measure and make some modifications. In order for me to fix the calculation, all that I'm going to do is, at the moment, I am removing the filters from the product key column, which is this particular column. Good. This is allowing me to get the total of the 3 products, which are the best 3 products. But I want to selectively also let the filters pass in for the 3 best products. That means, yes, I want to remove the filters, but I also want to keep the filters for the best 3 products. So imagine if these were the 3 best products, I would want the filters to come in only for these 3 and then let the numbers stay here and the rest numbers are going to disappear. How do we do all of that? What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and wrap the top 3 calculation or part of the calculation in the function called the KEEPFILTERS. That means allow the external filters from the pivot table to come inside. In case you don't know how to work with the KEEPFILTERS function, I'll highly recommend that you watch another video of mine, and that is going to help you out. So now if I happen to do the save on this particular calculation and run it, you're going to see that we get the right answers. Now, if you take a look, the top 3 products for the month of Jan were exactly 95, 120, 91, 800, and 82, 620. Now, you still must be wondering that what are these blank rows and why am I seeing the values? It's because we have one of the columns as total sales presented. And if we happen to just remove the total sales from this pivot table, I am going to just have the month of Jan and the best 3 products against that. How awesome is that? If you're enjoying this video so far, I'd like to give a big shout out about my courses on Power BI, especially DAX, modeling, and the M language. I teach them in a very, very structured way. I try to give you the logic of understanding the problem, deconstructing the problem, and then framing the solution of the problem. That logic helps you to understand the problem at hand that we are doing in the course. Not only that, but you can then take the logic and apply it to your own cases as well, which is going to tremendously boost your confidence of solving your own data problems. Hundreds of students have joined my courses and they have benefited a lot. In case you're interested, the link is down in the description. Go back to the video. The problem with the calculation at the moment is that it's getting a bit too dense and we have to add a lot of parts in the calculation. The other more important thing is that at the moment, the 3 products that we are choosing to input in the table are hard-coded. That means tomorrow, if the user says that I want to take a look at 10 products or 5 products, you would have to come to the formula to make those changes. So let's just keep those 2 changes in mind and start to make some modifications in the formula. The first modification that I'm going to make is that I am going to take out this table, which is the top 3 table, and I will use it multiple number of times. So I will rather declare it as a variable. So I'm going to cut this off from here, start to declare a variable, call this as my top table, and I'm just going to paste the code right here, and this is nothing but my top table. The next variable that I'm going to declare is the top monthly variable, which is going to actually calculate my monthly sales, and that is nothing but my calculate function. So in the calculate function, I am still doing calculate of the total sales. I'm keeping the filters on the top table. So this is my top table right here, and that's my variable, and then I just happen to close the bracket. Now at the answer, I'm just going to return nothing but the top monthly calculation, and this is kind of good to go. The calculation is slightly structured at the moment. Let's not hard code the value 3 and let the user select that how many values do they actually want. For me to be able to build a slicer right here that lets the user pick up the values, I would need to be able to create a column of a table, which is where we'll have some options. So let's just go ahead and create a column, and then we will use that column to build a slicer. As you can see in my Power BI report, I have created a new table called the top values table, and this table is nothing but a hard-coded list of 7 values. If you would like to create a lot many more values like 20 values or 100 values, it's not feasible for you to type these values out, and you can use the function called generate series. You can have a start value, you can have the end value, and you kind of press enter. It just gives you the same column right here. However, I've just hard-coded the values. It doesn't matter. Once you have this particular table created and you have a column created, using this particular column, we can build a slicer. Let's just do that. So I'm going to come back to the visual. I'm going to right click and add a visual. The visual that I want to add is nothing but a slicer, and then I'm just going to add the values, which is nothing but my value column right here, and that becomes a slicer. Now I will obviously change the format and the look and feel of the slicer. Go right here, up in the format, in the slicer settings right here, I'm going to say this is not going to be a between slicer, but let's just say that make this as a drop down. And I will also change the heading to top value, and that is kind of good to go. Now, once you actually go ahead and pick up values from the top value, maybe a 2 or a 3 or a 4, the problem is that nothing really happens to the visualization because nowhere you have captured the value 4 and altered the hard-coded 3 in your formula. So let's just do that. So I'm going to go ahead and make a very simple measure. The measure is going to be the top value measure. All that I am saying is that the table that I have just created, which is top values table, there is a column called the values column. Please pick up whatever is selected using the selected value function in that particular column. Just in case if the user picks up nothing in this particular column, in that case, you just write a default tree. That means I at least want to show 3 values at a minimum. Now, once you have this particular measure, what you can do is you can also test this measure out. So I can just maybe draw up a card visual like real quick, and I can just make a card visual, and I can say that, hey, I just want to test it out. That means I want to see that is the value that is there in the slicer also showing up in the card visual or not. So right now it shows you 4. If I happen to change that to 5, shows you 5, 6, whatever that is. Now that I have captured the value in a measure called top value, the hard-coded 3 is going to be replaced by the top value. So let's just delete that, go back to our measure, and replace the 3 by the measure, which is nothing but the top value. Now we are showing 6 values here, and as soon as I commit to this and write the code right here, you're going to see that we have obviously 6 values displayed right here. And if I now change that to, let's say, a 5 value or a 4 value or a 3 value, this is showing up pretty nice. If you currently take a look at the visual, it somehow looks kind of incomplete, because I can obviously take a look at, hey, what are my top 3 values? And I'm also able to take a look at what is the total of the top 3 values. And it also changes, by the way. So if I select top 4, the totals also change and reflect top 4 total. However, I do not really know that the rest of the values accumulate to how much and what's the total of all the values. So at the total level, I'm trying to modify this particular total into 3 different branches. I want to show the top 4 values total. Obviously, I want to show the others total, which is the total minus the top. That's what I want to do. And finally, I also want to show the total overall. That means if all the values were there, what would have been the total of all of that? So I want to have this particular calculation branched out into 3. Now, to be able to do that, I do not really want to work at this particular level, which is at the product key level. I only want to work at the total level. So whatever modifications that we're going to make to our measure at the moment are only going to be applied to the totals, and we will break this particular calculation into 3 calculations, which is where you will have the total, which is right here, the top total. You will have the others, which is the total minus the top, and you will obviously have the total as well. So let's just start modifying our calculation. The very first change that I want to make is that first I want to write a measure that allows me to maneuver to the totals row. That means I don't work here. I don't really want to break these calculations. I just want to work here. So let's just go and write some code. So I'm going to use a function called the InScope function. So I'm going to say that I'm making another variable and call this as month level. Technically, this is the product level, but I'm just calling this as a month level, and I'm going to use the function called the InScope function. The InScope function, I'm going to say that, hey, tell me, where are you working at the moment? Is the data summarized by the product key or not? And this is where the data is summarized by the product key, but this is where the data is not summarized by the product key. It's only summarized by the month. So I'm going to check, are you summarizing it by the product key or not in the products table? And if this particular condition is true, that means you are working at the month level, otherwise not. So I'm just going to go ahead and write a very simple if condition. So I'm going to say if the month level condition is true, then give me the top monthly, which is the value right here. Otherwise, just don't do anything at the moment. If I save the calculation and I run it, you're going to see that because at this particular stage, you are working at the product key level, your data is summarized, but here the data is not summarized by the product key. The calculations have disappeared because of this particular condition. Now, what I can do is I can design a calculation which is going to work at this particular blank level, which is after the false conditions of the if start. This is where I'm going to write a calculation that is going to modify this into 3 parts like the way that we discussed. Let's begin with that. Let's just start to create another variable called the month total. In the month total, I'm actually going to break this down into 3 different parts. The first part is going to be what is my others, what is my total sales, and what is the total of everything. So let's just create the total of everything. So I'm just going to say another variable, like this is like a nested variable. So I'm just going to say var total, and the total is nothing but the total sales of that particular month. And that's nothing but my total. Let's create another variable, call this as others. Now, obviously the others is going to be whatever you have calculated here, which is your overall total. So I'm just going to say total minus the top monthly is going to be your others. So now let's just real quick test it out. And I'm just going to say return, and I'm just going to say, hey, for this particular calculation, return the others right here. And I am going to say that if you're working at the month level, then show this particular calculation. But in case you're not working at the month level, you're working right here, then please show the month total variable. So I'm just going to go ahead and write a comma and say month total and just run this particular calculation. And let's just see what we get. So now we are seeing the others right here. And and which is absolutely amazing. At this stage, we have everything that we need. We have the total, we have others, and we have the top monthly as well, which is the total of the top 5 or 6. Now, let's just go ahead and concatenate all of these values one after the other so that instead of showing one value here, we actually show 3 values here. Let's just do that. So I'm going to go ahead and create another variable called the concat, and this is where I will build all my concatenations right here. First of all, I'm just going to use the format function because I'm just trying to do fancy comma separation and that kind of stuff. And I'm going to say, hey, this is going to be my top monthly, and the formatting that I would like to apply is this particular formatting, comma separated. Then I'd like to move to the next line, so I'm just going to use the unicharacter 10 to move to the next line. And then I would like to move to the next line, like have this right here. And then I'm going to format the others, so format, and we have others, and this is going to be formatted in the same style as the way we formatted it before. So Control C and then Control V, and then again I'm going to add like an enter, so unicharacter 10, and that is going to be my enter. And then I'm just going to finally write the final part of this particular calculation, which is nothing but the total. So again, format the totals as well, so format the total, and that is again going to be the same style as I have it. And this time, rather than actually returning the others, I'm going to return the concat variable right here. Now, if I just save on this particular calculation and happen to run it, you're going to see that at the total level, we don't get to see one number, but we get to see 3 numbers. So this is the total for the top 4, which is nice. This is everything else, others. And if you add these two, this is the overall of the product. At this stage, I have everything that I wanted, but the visual looks slightly incomplete. That means that I do have the numbers, but there is no labeling of the numbers. So we will move on to labeling, and which is where I would want to write something like top. I would want to write something like others, and I want to write something like overall total. So I would want to modify this particular total to have the correct labels placed so that I get to see the meaning of these values. And let's just see how do we do that. Alright, customizing the total is kind of not available in Power BI. That means there is no option that I have in Power BI, which is where I can go to the product key column right here in my table visualization right here, pick up this particular column, go in the settings and the format setting and alter what is written right here, and right here. It's kind of not possible. So what are we going to do here? I mean, you can argue with me that you can kind of do that, but it's not going to give you the same result as you would expect. Let me show you how can you probably do that, but it's not quite nice. So if you actually click on the visual right here, and if you actually go to the format pane, in the format pane, I'm going to go over to the row subtotals and turn it on. And you can see that we have the per row level. This actually allows you to customize your totals to the granularity that you would want. In the per row level, I'm going to pick up the product key right here. And here is where it allows you to write a different label. At the moment, if you notice, I need 3 labels right here. I need the top total, I need the others label, and I need the total right here. So I can write here top total, but there is no way for me to kind of do an enter here, move to the next row and do things like that. So I'm just kind of limited to what I can just write in the first row and I'm kind of done. So this is not what I want. I need a more dynamic thing. For which, what we're going to do is to be able to customize the total, we would need a measure that behaves like a column that we have created in Power BI. I'll repeat myself once again. We will need to create a measure that behaves like this column, meaning all of the values that you see right here should be shown in this measure, at the moment blank. It should be shown right here. So 355, 357, 359, so on and so forth. And at the total level, I will then write whatever I want because the totals can be customized for measures. And we have seen that one example right here. So I will write the 3 labels that I would want. And in terms of rows, I just want to replicate whatever product key I have. Let's just see how can we do that. So I'm going to show you a very simple trick. And hopefully with that trick, you'll be able to understand, but the measure is slightly long. I will not write the long measure because it involves a lot of if, but I will just give you a mental framework to think about it. The very first thing that I will check is that where are you working at the moment? Are you working at the product key level or not? So in scope product key, so product key right here. And then the second condition that I want to check is that the top product sales is present or not. So I'm just going to say top product sales, is that not equal to blank or not? These are my 2 conditions that I want to check, right? And I'm just going to write that if condition right here. So if this particular condition, if these 2 conditions are true, then what I would want to do is I just want to write maybe the very product. So this is the product that I want to write it here. And the way to be able to select this particular product using the selected values function. And in this, I'm just going to put the product key right here, product key, close the bracket, and I will just press enter and I will just run this calculation. Now, once I run this calculation, you're going to see that we have nearly mimicked the behavior of this column. So what we have it here, we have it here. Now I will just redesign the calculation for the totals as well and write whatever label that I want to write. And my slightly modified calculation looks something like this. I've built a bunch of if conditions just to kind of maneuver to the totals row. And if I now go ahead and run this particular calculation, you're going to see that we have nearly mimicked the behavior of the column that we dragged. That means this particular column is exactly matching this this column. The only difference is that we have been able to customize the total as well. Now, at the moment, this is not obviously looking presentable. So what do we do about it? Now, here is the trick. I'm going to go ahead and open up the pane right here. In the pane, I'm going to say that my first column is the month. My second column is going to be this particular column. So I'm just going to move the column up in the values right here. And the third column is going to be the product sales column. This column is not what I need, but I can't really dump the column outside because this is going to break the visual. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to just hide the column, and there's a trick to hiding the column. So I'm just going to start collapsing the width of the column, and as soon as I do that, you're going to see that the column starts to wrap itself. You can see that the title has wrapped itself in 2 rows. If I further squeeze it down, you're also going to see that the numbers start wrapping themselves as well. Now what I need to do is, in order for me to adequately fit all the width of the column, I need to remove the wrapping behavior of the column. So how do I do that? I'm just going to go ahead and open up the format and search for the word wrap, and wherever the wrap is on for the values, I can turn it off, and you can see that this will not be wrapped in 2 rows. It will just be one single row. Column headers remove and row headers also remove, and you're going to see that this is now coming into a single row right here. So if I just maybe collapse this right here all the way towards in the end, you'll see that that column has disappeared. It's still there, adding as a context to our calculation, but it's not visible. Now our visual is complete. If I now change the year 2003, I'm taking a look at top 4 values, top 5 values, top 3 values, and we are kind of good to go. The only part remaining is just prettying up this visual and adding a bit of formatting flair to it. Let's move on to that next. There are 2 things that I want to do when it comes to formatting. The first one is I would like to add a conditional formatting bar here just to represent the volume of the sale or the height of the sale. And the second thing that I want to do is just add a bit of space and a blank row to this so that it looks cleaner, right? Let's just do both of them. In order for me to add that bar, I've written a very simple conditional formatting calculation, and that is going to be product CF bar. We're obviously going to turn off the title, but here is a DAX measure for it. It's very, very simple. All that I'm doing is navigating it to the row, and when I'm navigating it to the row, I don't really want any number here, and I just display the number, whatever that is. Once you have made this particular calculation, I will use this calculation to apply conditional formatting. How? Let's just take a look. So I'm just going to go over to the visual. The product CF bar is right here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say that I want to apply conditional formatting, and I want to apply a data bar. That opens up the box. I can pick up whatever conditional formatting that I want. I want it to be minimal. I don't really want the axis, and I only want to show the bar. That means I don't really want to show the numbers. I click on OK, and what we get is just the bar. The one thing that I still want to adjust is the title, so I don't really want to have the title, and I can just double click right here, delete everything, and add a space, and that actually removes the title. Now I can just increase the width of the column just to kind of show the bar, and we are kind of good to go. The other thing that I would want is that I also want to add a blank row here just to kind of add more visual clarity to the visual. So I'm just going to go right here, open up this particular format option, and just going to add a blank row, and this is just going to give you more visual clarity right here. At the moment, this doesn't look very, very pretty, but we have to do more formatting for this visual to start looking a lot better. You ready? 3, 2, 1. All right, once I have done all the kind of formatting, leveled up the quality of the visual, adjusted the font size and all of that, my visual looks something like this, which is where we have the year, we have the top count, we have any kind of slices that you would want, and the visual looks spectacular. The next thing that I want to talk about is that how can you customize your matrix tables in such a way that it resembles Excel looking like tables. This is not a very easy thing to do, but you will learn that in the next video. I'll see you in that. Cheers.